all four of you for making it here so far. If you're here, I'm pretty sure that there was something very remarkable about you that the judges gave you the marks that they gave you, and so you're here. Going forward, we will have today two sessions, so two matches between four teams. The first session would be between Bangladesh and Indonesia, and the second session would be between Sudan and Jordan. And all the judges present today will be judging each sessions subsequently. I'm actually anticipating an incredible debate because these teams, I've seen them uh, I've seen them in the debates that they've done, and I'm anticipating a great challenging debate between these teams. I see with me other team members. I see someone from Team Gambia. They're not there, but I'm really happy to see that they come out there for support. I see members of the organizing committee, and I see members from ICYF over here. And so I just want to kick this off with a note of good luck for all the teams participating, a note of good luck for the judges as well, because I'm sure that it will not be an easy job judging these great teams. But before we really move on to the matches themselves, I want to kind of welcome the judges on board, and I'd like for them to come on board and just say, just talk to the teams and the people who are watching for like 2 minutes, if possible. And so I would like to open the floor and give the floor, the virtual floor, to Tasneem if she's prepared. And so if she can introduce herself and talk about her experience so far and what she's anticipating to go into as she moves into the semifinals. Tasneem.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the first thing I want to do is I want to thank everybody for organizing this tournament. So Taba, thank you very much. Enes, Idi, for inviting me. I think I've had a wonderful time judging. As I've said earlier, it's such an honor to see all of these different countries competing. And given obviously the fact that we're in a pandemic and everyone is online, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for me to be online and judging. So I've had fun. It's really interesting. It's different, obviously, from having physical contact face to face, but I still think that the spirit of the debating has been maintained. I've seen some excellent debates, some very good arguments, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them myself. I hope that even though we're all virtual, we're still able to make friends and get to know one another. So I really hope that we're able to take that element of debating into it as well. My name is Tasneem Ilyas. I maybe should have started off with that. I've been in debating for far too long. I've been in debate for over 10 years. I started off as a debater, as a coach, as a judge, and I'm currently heading the English debates at Qatar Debate right now. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the semis.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. A very short, sweet introduction from you. It's been a pleasure having you on board, and really your support has meant a lot in terms of us shaping this debate to the best possible. I believe Defrem is also here with us. Defrem, if you are here, can I give you the floor for like 2 minutes to do the same thing Tasneem just did right now?
Okay, if anyone can hear me, first of all, my name is Defrem. I'm from Albania, and to be honest, I mean, I like that is something that due to Corona, we are all obliged to be at home, and almost we are all obliged to forge a different format. But I think this has been a great success so far, where I can see that teams are really well prepared, though are from different parts of the world, though may not have the best internet connection, but have done the best to maintain a very high spirit of debate and a very high quality of debate. That's the first. Secondly, this is my kind of part of my heart. I mean, debate have been always in my heart, and I have been debating since back in Malaysia, where I did my bachelor's for almost during those times for almost 6 years over there, and 4 years here in Turkey, where I have been coaching debates for starting from schools to 2 different universities here in Istanbul, and so far I'm enjoying, and wish you all the best to the participants.
Thank you so much, Defrem. It's so nice having you, and as Tasneem, you have also contributed immensely in shaping the program. So I thank you wholeheartedly from the side of the organizers to you. I also see with me Noor. Noor, if you're here, can I also have like a 2 minutes quick statement from you insofar your experience with the program has concern, and going forward, what do you anticipate in the semifinals and finals? If if Noor isn't here, I also see Ahmed with us. He's also been with us, judging with us. Ahmed, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, would you like to just share your insights of the program so far?
Yes. My name is Ahmet Kutlucu. I'm from Turkey. Right until now, I think it was a really good tournament, and I really watched really good debates. And I'm expecting to watch even a better debate at the semifinals with a very good motion. And I want to thank OIC from Enes and Tabayu, that you probably worked very hard, maybe harder than I harder than I did, trying to set emotions and trying to communicate between us. So I want to thank you really much, and I want to congratulate all the participants, and I want to wish them luck.
Thank you so much, Noor. Ahmed, for that insight. Is Noor here with us?
Yep.
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear me, but yeah.
I can hear you, Noor. Would you like to just quickly go over your experience and introduce yourself and tell us what you're anticipating in the semifinals?
I believe that the strongest teams have definitely made it ahead, because I wasn't judging the very first round of the debate, the round one, but I sat through one of the debates, and I do believe that the strongest teams have made it forward. So it would be very exciting to see where we go from here. Personally, as far as my profession is concerned, I'm a teacher. I teach English literature at the University of Karachi. I'm also an film student. As far as debates are concerned, I have been doing debates, declamations, public speaking, where
I think Noor had a problem with her connection, which is completely okay. Am I audible to the rest of you? Right, great.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate that Ruth disconnected, but I think we've talked enough. The opening ceremony has stretched too long enough, and personally, I am pretty excited to hear the debates now. I don't want to make any longer, and I'm pretty certain. Looking at the faces of the debaters, I think they're very anxious and they're very enthusiastic at the same time, and they want to move forward as well. So I don't want to be the wall keeping them apart from what they're here to do in actuality. So without further ado, I would really like if we can get ahead with the debates. I would like to welcome Team Bangladesh, if they're here, and Team Indonesia to just come forward. And I would like to hand over the virtual floor to the judges. And I would like for the debate to start, really. Wait. So this team, can I request you just to kind of take the floor and start the session? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Rutaba, for handing over. I think we're all very excited and we're looking forward to a wonderful round. I think just before we get started, if I could just quickly get this speaking order. In proposition, we have Team Indonesia. Who will be speaking first, second, and third?
From the proposition, am I audible?
Oh, proposition is Bangladesh.
Yeah, so from the proposition, Rejaunnabi will be speaking first. Farhan Rahman second.
Second.
Ahmed Imtiaz Samad third.
Excellent. And who's giving the reply speech?
The reply speech will be given by Farhan Rahman.
Excellent. And Team Indonesia?
Meteo will be speaking first. Rafli Rizky will be second.
Okay.
And Krishna Aji will be the third.
And the reply?
Rafli Rizky.
Rafi. Excellent. Okay, so you know the drill. Substantive speeches are 7 minutes long. The first minute and the last minute are protected. You will hear a bell indicating when you can ask points of information after the first minute. You'll hear another bell at the 6th, meaning that you can no longer ask points of information. You'll hear 2 bells at the 7th, meaning that your time is up. Reply speeches are only 4 minutes long, and there'll be no points of information in reply speeches. So there will only be 1 bell at 3 to indicate that you have a minute to wrap up, and 2 bells at 4. Okay, if you don't have any further questions, I think we're very excited to start. The motion for today is that democracy should limit donations to election campaigns for parties and for candidates to single small donations from individual persons. I'd like to invite our first speaker for today from Team Proposition. Here.
So am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so starting in 3, 2, 1. So, honorable judge, panel, today we're going to talk about democracy and how individual person's donation benefits towards the democratic cause better than anything else. To elaborate my point, democracy is a system for the people, by the people, of the people. Through passing today's motion, we ensured this. Now, let's get to our first arguments. So, let's paint a picture of what the democracy of the current world looks like. We have candidates who are taking donations from corporations, who are taking donations from cults, billionaires, who are taking donations from supremacist groups, and all sorts of other messy stuff. We have people who deal with drug trades, trafficking, and other things, and often don't really put this money into their bank accounts. Rather, they reinvest it into the election campaigns to make sure whatever fucked up things they end up doing as actually gets continuation and further support from these politicians. So as a result, what happens is that the politicians have specific pools and interest groups that they must satisfy before the needs of the people are ever addressed. So oftentimes, what this leads to is a trickle-down effect of the establishment of a give and take system. That is to say, we can see at the Trudeau's SNC Lavalin scandal, where even being an avid environmentalist and talking about the environment all the time, he still had to protect a organization, a corporation that was harming the environment. We can see that in this case, politicians often have no other choice but to cater to these groups in order to stay in office, in order to further their own career, own agenda, and etc., which undermines the authority of the people itself, the very thing that democracy is designed to protect and enforce, and creates a lot of damage and harm to the participatory democracy. So essentially, this turns people into slaves of these groups. That is to say, these corporations, these various type of supremacist groups bring out policies or enforce policies through their lobbying, which ultimately harms the people and keeps them down. Coming to my second argument, this contributes to the widening of the social wealth gap. Oftentimes, what we see is this interest groups care about profiting off of people's misery. These interest groups are deliberately trying to keep the population poor so that they can increasingly capitalize on the people's labor and keep themselves rich, where we see that even Democrats with good intentions, even politicians who came with all the best intentions of heart, are bringing out shitty welfare policies due to the fact that these organizations, these corporations keep getting in the way. So what is our answer to this? We're proposing a model. We understand the fact that donations are an unescapable fact. Political parties need to capitalize on donations, and political parties need this money to keep their campaign running. So donations are principally justified. What is not justified is taking money from these groups with special interests, these groups who have nothing more than black money, who significant funding of whom comes from unlawful sources. Taking donation from these sources are actually unacceptable and is not principally justified. So in our model, we're going to have a $1,000 cutoff point per person, and the donation is going to be depending on the geographic location, the GDP, the income structure of states. Then this also is going to vary from nation to nation, from state to state, depending on their circumstances. So everybody in this model gets to choose their political parties and their representatives, and it ultimately gets they ultimately get to spread their message throughout the society. Now, what does this lead to? This leads to our third argument, and which is a very important point: accountability. In the past, politicians were able to escape these accountabilities, and their accountabilities came only from these lobbyist groups, which if they did not cater to, they had to face the consequences. In the next time go around, their opposition might have gotten the higher funding and lobbying from those groups. So now that the principal amount of money for their campaigns and the main sources of their campaigns come from the people, this forces these politicians to be accountable to their people as they are the main stakeholders. So politicians are no longer needed the support of these corporations to stay in office, and people's participation through this process is more ensured, as people directly get to participate in democracy and show their power. And people's donation will actually increase in this point, because they know that now corporations like, say, BAT, Unilever, corporations or shady billionaires, they can no longer fund the politicians. So this means that now people have to fund their politicians to ensure that their voice is heard and the parties that they support are wins at the end of the day. So coming to the fourth
Okay, I've stopped the timer.
Yeah, we're just gonna wait for him for a minute and see if he can reconnect, and then give him the last minute. I believe it was his last minute. Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can
He's
you hear me?
great.
Yeah, my data connection went offline.
Okay,
Should
that's
I
fine. We stopped the timer. You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay.
Okay.
So should I? Okay. So continuing to the right-wing versus left-wing argument, oftentimes we see that right-wing politicians cater to these groups more. They oftentimes they get these fundings from these corporations, these interest groups. We see people like Donald Trump. We see hardcore Republicans who mostly cater to things like racism, things like stopping things like student loan and things like that. We see that these right-wing Republicans are the ones who gets the bulk share of these organizations' money. So this creates a problem for the left wing. That is to say, the left wing politicians who do want to do good, who do want to create environmental change, who wants to bring forth student loans, welfare, they cannot do this because either they lack funding or their efforts are stopped by those right wings who are significantly more funded than their left-wing counterparts. So in enacting this model and our policies and passing this motion, we ensure that both parties get a equal power, and both parties are able to match on an even playing field, and we go much closer to prosperity and a more beautiful democratic world. With that, I end my thank you very much.
I'd like to thank their speaker for their speech, and I'd like to invite our first speaker from opposition. Here.
Test, am audible? Cool. Give me a couple of seconds. Judges, I think there are several clarifications that you need to consider in this debate, right? First of all, you need proposition need to explain what are the likelihood of people that are going to donate on their side of the house, because look, it's very unclear on the alternative of the world they want to propose. Like, how do people eventually get the money? Why then people are eventually going to have the incentive to donate to these particular political groups, given that in current status quo, they are very less likely for individuals to donate in comparison to corporation, in comparison to like NGOs or other huge groups, right? I think that kind of picturizations would never exist on their side of the house. So I hope that the second speaker raises that. So how does overall in opposition will looks like? I think in our side, the model is first, we think that in democratic state, you should not impose any forms of limitations to any election campaigns. There is to say that means we're not going to limit the amount of money. So, but second of all, we think that proposition have to concede and deal to a concession that the limitation is that strict. Therefore, the amount of money that these political groups are gained also going to be that small. But third of all, we think that under our side, we'll happy to defend like things like accountability and so on and so forth, and check and balance. We're happy to like trace back certain donators so that we know, so that those donations are not anonymous. Things like, for example, in Indonesia, we have an election law that bans anonymity to reduce like corporations and corruptions and collusions and etc. We think those are not our burden to defend, right? But lastly, we think that on their side of the house, we need to understand that these donations from individuals are that limited because they don't have like capital donation, etc., etc. But furthermore, the most important thing to understand is that political organizations are not as bad as what they depict, right? It's not always about like these evil corporations, but there are also other NGO and corporation activisms who also likely to donate on good things, right? So several response towards their side of the house, right? So first of all, on their side of the house, on how they say, oh, this political party will cater to most of this lobbying group. I think, first of all, it's very untrue and it's very illogical. I don't think that all politicians and political party are that reckless. I think that most politicians also wants to get re-elected in the future, and those votes are contingent by the society. So if they want to characterize that these political party are extremely leaning to these corporations, not the society, I don't think that society will vote for them in the future re-elections, right? So I don't think that it's that bad. But second of all, I think that relying on corporation is a legitimate forms of political grievances, because I don't think you should buy all the logic that all corporations is that bad. They want to lobby, they want to use this black money, etc., etc. We think there are many corporations like Microsoft or Amazon's who basically donate to black political groups. Those kind of things still exist, right? So I don't think it's our burden to defend the idea about accountability, etc., etc., because most of their problems that they portray in these debates are basically a technical problem. So now moving on to my arguments. First of all, I'm going to talk about why then we need to give, this huge amount of political donations are important for the purpose of democracy, right? So first of all, what you need to understand is that the parameter of an ideal political participation. When we talk about politics in democratic countries, it's also about how society, how our minority society can also be included in that kind of political participations. How those certain individuals who don't live in urban areas can take part and also well informed, right? We think it's important to create as much as entry point as possible to every individuals, because the access of democracies is the basic and the most important feature. This is exactly the problem lies, because when we're talking about access, it's very wide. Like various geographical locations are very expensive, because when we're talking about expanding access, we're talking about like creating internet ads, invest on campaign teams in certain province who are very secluded in certain area to inform people about various issues. This is exactly how Mike Bloomberg reached to Guam or other US archipelagic states, which cost basically millions of dollars. This is exactly the problems on their side of the house, because I think that the donations are going to be largely and very limited, because first of all, we think that personal or individuals' capital are not as much as other like groups or capital saving or corporations. Mostly society are still dominated in middle or low class society. But second of all, even if society have that big of a capital, we think it's only limited to rich individuals only, the amount which are basically not many and not the majority, right? This is exactly what changes when we don't limit this amount of donations. First of all, we think that the interests of society are solidified because we have a concrete goal and enough resources to donate to millions of dollars to these particular parties, and they can utilize this money to expand their campaign to give access and important information to the society about political participations, right? in proposition, most probably when the money are limited, you invest only in well-established area, mostly in urban or capital region only. What does it mean? It means it's only privileged people can have access to politics. The issues are only stay in the majority area. Exactly, this unfair because poor people and marginalized community who live cannot access those kind of equal democratic access, right? But second of all, why then huge donations are exactly very important to this minority to have a political grievance, right? Because you need to analyze how big donations are actually operates, right? We don't think it's only to company, but mostly company right now, they already align to certain political activisms, how NGO advocates for certain minority interests. This is exactly how donations are very crucial to this minority political party. Because understand the donations are not only exclusive to well-established party like the Democrats or the Republicans, but huge donations can be directed to minority groups, which require a lot of funding. This is exactly how Amazon donate millions of dollars to black political groups. This is exactly how Rashida Tlaib are able to climb the political social ladder because they get funding from Microsoft, for example. What does it tell you? It tells you that under our side, we are more likely to protect minority groups that represent us because they are more exposed to politics because the money can be distributed thoroughly. The comparative underside of the house is only limited to rich people and rich politicians only that will dominate the politics within because minority don't have the affirmative actions. But lastly, why then political lobbying power will not exist in this debate? Because you need to understand, the moment that there is one corporation lobby for a certain agenda, there are other corporations as well lobby for other agenda. What does that mean? It means that the power will not be centralized to a particular lobbying power, but it will be equally divided by other lobbying power. So at best, there are lobbying power. It's going to be many lobbying power. I don't think it's going to be that predatory. But second of all, we think that lobbying power or these corporations are illegitimate forms of grievance because these corporations represent parts layer of society, like the NRA who represents society who think gun ownerships are important in America, or the pharmaceutical company who thinks this is very important, and we think those are the things that you need to be considered. We're very proud to propose.
Okay, I'd like to thank the speaker for their speech, and I'd like to invite our second speaker from Team Proposition. Here.
All right, Madam Speaker, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, just give me a moment now. All right, let's see, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I have a lot of responses right down real fast. They have 7 assertions. I'm going to engage with every single one of them individually. 1, they claim that this would mean less donations coming in, right? We completely conflict with the fact, knowing full and well that the ownership that goes behind every single donation significantly goes up. And this is principally the comparative that Reja introduced, but they were completely dismissive about. But secondly, when they talk about there is no limitation in donation, we think this is quite problematic and a huge threat. Understand, if you had literally someone who's making war deals and selling nuclear warheads, for someone like him to understand that if they invest on a certain senator and they have a higher chance of not having sanctions on this, they would probably invest a shit ton of money on that, right? But thirdly, when they think about that, people are not necessarily evil, we beg to disagree, right? Understand, it doesn't take a lot of good in this world for you to understand that someone who calls other people, other ethnic minorities, aliens, other ethnic minorities, people who are racist or hypocrites, right? In cases such as this, I don't think it takes that much goodwill or good nuance for you to understand in which world you have the power to donate. But fourthly, when they talk about minority societies, and here is why we're going to rebut 3 of their arguments. When they think about rich privileged people getting away with it, or an equal division of power, their entire premise in all these 3 of contentions are the amount of ability for someone like an ethnic minority to generate a lot of profit or a lot of resources is equal to that of someone who's already privileged. Why is this comparative so important? Because we believe in their world, the networking is quite asymmetric. We used to say someone who's already very rich has more networking and has more resources is more likely to get people to endorse him. Meaning someone from the ethnic minority community of Latino American is less likely to be endorsed in USA than someone even from Detroit who is a white cis male. But last but not the least, when they believe that they're going to raise millions and millions of dollars, the biggest problem is just because you raise millions doesn't necessarily mean you get utility worth of millions. Which is to say, this is the comparative that Reja gave. He clearly explained as per why you spend years paying off debt to your investors. Three principal nuances extended from Reja's speech. One, we believe you manufacture opinions in a very unlawful way. Why is this quite problematic? We believe that the one day of the year that everybody's opinion is the same and the amount of autonomy a billionaire has and someone from the ghetto has is one freaking vote. The moment in time you intervene without owning up to what you ideologically believe, just because that's your corporate stance, we think that's quite problematic. But secondly, and this is the part where it gets interesting, principally, we believe you should not donate to something just because of individual gains when the principle of democracy or voting or oftentimes political campaigns tend to be directed toward the greater good. Why is this analogy quite important? Because we see people's rights being violated when they work for organizations, big MNCs and corporations, when they have to chase endorsers and people and of the management. They have to opt into this political narrative without truly believing into it. Why is this important? Because we believe the amount of sincerity that goes behind your pursuit of an endorsement and actually pitching someone's campaign is quite important, and you need to be truthful to what you believe. But thirdly, principally, we believe it is quite important that the amount of donation that goes in are significantly from people who are accountable to what they're investing in. Meaning this is not someone that's investing just because their company will get no sanction or taxing exempt for the next 7 to 10 years. It is quite important for you to understand that the amount of accountability that goes in behind every endorsement will be now at a very individual level. Meaning, even if you donate $1,000, every single one of the buck will go to things that you truly intrinsically believe to be true, rightful, and just for democracy. Now, 5 consequential comparisons. 1, we believe the accountability of investors significantly increase. Why does that happen? Because 2 things. 1, now they just can go away and think, I have $10 million to spend. Let's spend $5 million on Trump and $5 million on Hillary. And I think I'll get to drill a hole in Pacific Ocean because I need to make a lot of oil, right? Things like that goes out of the window. But more importantly, you truly have to like them, believe in them, and take a corporate stance on them and preach this message of truism that, yeah, these are people who are probably better for our country rather than these are people who are better for our organization. Second comparison, we believe this will significantly decrease the liability of political owners. Why is that important? Imagine that Hillary Clinton becoming the first ever female president in US, working for women, going for those green initiatives, trying to make the environment significantly better, trying to make the border safer. But she can't focus on any one of those because she has 57 million worth of donations from MNCs who don't necessarily care about those policies, who only care about significant political agendas and tax exempts and their interest more than those important issues that Hillary could have catered to. Point being, the amount of debt that you owe when you step into the parliament significantly decreases under our world. But thirdly, and this is the part where we seal the coffin, right? We believe that the amount of gap that's between the rich and the poor and the people who get nominated significantly decrease. Why does that happen? That happen because the amount of power, political prowess, societal capability that you can generate being someone who doesn't have a lot of resources and someone who already has a lot of privilege to begin with is significantly different. Meaning the trickle down that is existent is quite clear at this point. I will take 1 POI, please. All right, no POIs, that's very interesting. All right, so 2 more comparisons. 1, we believe as per why corporations are less likely to invest in left than are in right. Why does that happen very frequently in the status quo? Because understand, when you invest in Go Green initiative, somebody from Philip Morris doesn't necessarily get a lot of money, right? Oftentimes, there are things that are done out of charity and sheer goodwill and for the betterment of the country. As opposed to when you like fund right-wing conservative leaders, these are not people who necessarily care about human rights, autonomy, or even the betterment of the environment, or even like the judicial system, or even anything that has remotely has to do with anything that has to do with citizens, right? They care about the amount of number that goes up in their bank accounts. And that's why we believe it's that much harder for people to endorse right-wing people under our world that is to the left. But lastly, we understand that the amount of shit slinging that happens in social media, from like hacking of the US elections to creating problematic propagandas, that is that much easier, harder for you to fund, but more importantly, to target ethnic minorities and preach hate messages on a mass level in social media. What's the contention and what's the conclusive line from my speech? I believe it is better to lose 1,000 elections for 1,000 years than to win it in the wrong way by the wrong investors, because entire campaign and the entire system will be paying off the debt of those campaign monies. And for this reason, I think it's quite impossible for Bangladesh to lose this debate at this point. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the speaker for their speech, and I'd like to invite our second speaker from Team Opposition. Here.
Check, check. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hold on, let me set my timer.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that in this debate, we should get out of the, like a liberal bubble debate, because we are talking about the democratic system, right? We are talking not about the result, but we talk about the equal opportunity of each and every single individuals that exists in this debate, right? So what I'm going to advocate inside of opposition, I'm going to advocate several things, right? Number one, what is the consequences of receiving unlimited donation and why it is good? And number two, I'm going to compare how then, if the donation is that limited on side of proposition, what kind of political circumstances will look like, and I'm going to explain why then those things are bad for democratic system, right? The rebuttals will be integrated towards my points of issues. So first issues, I'm going to talk about the accountability of the corporation. Right? So the team coming from the governance side of the house believes that the accountability for the corporation can only be attained if we limit their own political donation. Several key respects why this is wrong. Number one, we think that in functional democracy of law and order are still exist. Any kind of terms of corruption and also mismanagement of resources or even past scandals are still going to be investigated by the judicative. This is the consequences of trias politica, in which the government power were separated by the judicial in and of itself, right? But number two, I think that the presence of corporation can still be asked for accountability, namely things like, like disclosing the identity and disclosing how much wages in which they give towards the political individuals and so on and so forth, right? But so then the ability of you reducing the donation will eventually going to be, like a mismatch solution in this kind of cases, right? But number three, in talking about the corporation personal interest, I have two responses to that. Number one, I think that the ability of the corporation, if they are going to donate that very much big towards politician, for political parties or political entities, and even in the status quo they are big, that means they are still going to be demanded a lot by the individuals on the ground, right? Namely the property companies, namely the financial or bank institutions. Surely their ability to donate such big, because people are still believe in the form of capitalism, because people are still believe in the system of free market ideals instead of socialism, for example. So I don't think that it will be eventually eliminated in any senses, right? But number two, instead of talking about, like a personal approach in paying off debt and etc., I don't think that the system would eventually becoming that bad, because eventually, if there is a lobbying power, there will be a multiple lobbying power in status quo, right? Such as, for instances, the growing a lot of the corporate activities activism have led, like lots of CSR or even progressive CEO that wants their company to be contribute towards a more progressive societies in and of itself. So if there is a political lobbying power out of the for-profit corporation, I think that in the end of the day, it will be going to be, like equalized in between one and another, right? But second issue I'm going to talk about is how then we are going to endorse the minority individuals, like how then the less fortunate individuals who would like to enter politics. I have three key aspects of idea to respond into this, right? Number one, the ability for the minority to get a lot of, like political donation are still exist. My first speaker already told to you that there is a lot of growing such as corporate activism and also diversification of political donors to begin with. It is not just, like the property companies or even mining or guns company who are, who are pandered with the right wing, that there is also development of tech companies like Microsoft who endorse minority individuals because they wanted to give CSR, because Bill Gates believes in the minority empowerment and etc. Right? So this thing is not the tipping point of the debate, right? But what is the both can receive donation is that the ability to reach out political access in and of itself, right? Seems like team government neglects the idea that if the white and rich privileged individuals are already rich, ladies and gentlemen, then eventually not receiving donation wouldn't become any kind of problems to begin with. Take a look at Mike Bloomberg, who owns like dozens of towers in New York, who he doesn't get any kind of political donation, but still can do campaign. Eventually he gets political access to begin with. And an alternate scenario, Rashida Tlaib, who is coming from a refugee family, can still get political donation out of Microsoft and other banking corporation and property corporations in the end of the day, right? So what is the importance in this case? The importance in this case is that if you bear the ability for an individuals to get like a lot of political donation, eventually the alternative is that you seek for your own personal pocket to eventually enters politics in the end of the day, right? Such as Mike Bloomberg are using, like his corporation asset or his personal asset investment and so on and so forth. At this very moment, there are two important consequences. Number one, you reduce political access for those who are less fortunate. But number two, even then the personal interest of the individuals would most likely going to be enacted, since there is no third party, who wanted to ask accountability for changes in the end of the day, right? So I don't think that the ability for the minority will eventually going to be decreased, right? But number three, I'm going to talk about the issue of the principles in this debate, right? There are two principles in which I wanted to compare in this debate. One, talk about political access, and number two, I'm going to talk about, like the democracy as a whole. Let's move on towards the principle number one. Upon talking on the on the presence of political participation, such as what my team have explained, the ability of an individuals to, doing political campaign are pretty much expensive. Like in the United States, you need to spend 1.2 million US dollar for Congress, for instances, and so on and so forth, right? At this very moment, if you don't get any kind of political donation, what will happen is that you don't have any kind of access into that. But number two, the consequences is that you are less likely to expand your political campaign towards the less populous areas, such as the rural area or the rural states that exist in the status quo. The reason as to why people are so much apathetical towards politics is because they are uninformed, because there is no political platform such as, political representative, political volunteer, and also the access towards political advertise to begin with. At this very moment, when you bear people in getting access for politics, for a political issue, for example, that means right now we are already disinformed the individuals that existed on the ground. And I don't think that eventually it will also cater the principle of democracy in the terms of participation in the end of the day, right? But number two, in talking about corporate accountability, like accountability for the people, and why then people power can still be winning in our side of the house, right? Number one, people power are still going to be considered because there is a concept of one people, one vote, right? The ability of corporation does not hinder this kind of idea because it is in and of itself the principle of democracy. So the most important tipping point in this debate is that we are not talking about the amount of the donation or who received the donation, but talking about the rights of receiving the donation and how then receiving those donation is in and of itself will be contributive towards the political system in democracy with very much to close our case. Thank you.
Madam Chair, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. I'd like to thank that speaker for
Okay.
their speech and invite our Gov Whip. Here, here.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Madam Chair, understand this. In their part of the world, they want to cater to few individuals. A, that is corporates. B, they want to ensure the proper election takes place under no circumstances and no checkpoints and no accountability whatsoever. So in their world, I don't necessarily think the people are better off. I don't necessarily think the people or politicians themselves can function betterly, because at the end of the day, a lot of strings attached behind the door of this politician to enact, not to enact many policies or not to do the good for the welfare of the society. That means people are systematically disenfranchised in the world of the opposition. But what we tell from the government side in this debate, we come up and tell you how the world of democracy look like in this current status quo. It is extremely narrowed down by the world of the corporation, meaning all the politicians have been brought down by these big political parties, and pro-environmental policies is not enacted still now in this world. The moment when we see the Bernie Sanders or AOC try to pitch the Green New Deal, the moment in time the Justin Trudeau or in some other countries, like even in United States, they Donald Trump or like Joe Biden, they constantly keep fuel by this sort of corporation whatsoever. Understand this. They come up and tell you that there should be no limitation on money. At the same time, that means the concept of the damages that we already talk about, meaning all this harm that we talk about. Also, let's try to give much more example. Moment in time, this black money is associated by the dark cartels, by the big corporates and the supremacists. Meaning, all the black market that happens in Africa right now, or even in Indonesia, when the big cartels are exploiting the palm oil industry, we don't necessarily think where this money goes. This money does not go to the bank or even for the welfare sake of the country. This money is kept for the company to invest in the election that my prime minister already talked about, but no response and whatsoever from the opposition side till now. Also, we came up and talk about people have much more accountability and people have much more transparency in order where this money spends, right? We come up and tell you that in United Kingdom, you have a certain limitation that you cannot spend more than 30,000 pounds in your election campaign. But moment in time, when you allow unlimited amount of money to be spent, even if there is some sort of laws and regulation that were also one of the contention of the opposition side, we understand this law and regulation do not stop these people or do not stop this corporation to intervene in this debate. What happens? At the end of the day, all these corporations, they go away by donating the CSR. Later, please, I'm taking it later. All these companies, they give away CSR and they sugarcoat their goodwill and whatsoever. But at the end of the day, people are systematically disenfranchised and the people's mandate or policy is not enacted at the end of the day. Why it is important to talk about people in this debate is because these people have solely vouched or voted their power. And why this vote is extremely important and why this politician and corporation do not believe this voting power of these people right now to establish a fair ground of accountability, right? The moment in time when we allow voting right is a kind of right that allows an individual to stand on a ground, meaning me as an individual sitting in a good welfare state or good welfare society versus someone living in the downstream in a slum have the same right. That is the voting right. The moment in time when we take away all these voting rights and allow these corporations to quill up or like try to buy these votes and try to gerrymander all these consequences in a US politics or even in low developing countries like in South Asia, at the very moment we don't necessarily think the essence of the democracy established in the house of the opposition as well. Also, they come up and tell you the excess of the poor will exist more. The moment in time there will be a lot more donation. Understand this: the corporations are never likely to donate people like AOC who always talk for the pro-environmental movement, right? So they will always try to vote or they will always try to subscribe their donation to corporates such as like Total Company or this company or BAT or the cigarette company or the arms companies always likely to vote for Donald Trump because the Donald Trump is always going to support this corporation and their benefits. As a result, the exploitation of people will already exist. But there is no responsibility whatsoever from the opposition side as well. Also, they come up and tell you the lobby is going to systematically like disappear and whatsoever. But that is a very wrong assertion. Farhan already came up and told you that the moment in time, one corporation corporation invest 50-50 amount of their donation to different political party. It's not because they want a particular party to win, but rather they want to engage an auxiliary pressure to that political party that if you do not enact this policy for me, probably I'm going to make sure that opposite party to you is going to win the election and going to work for me. At the very moment in time, the new generation or the left-wing political party or the new candidate are never likely to incentivize to invest the time and effort or the talents in the politics. What happens next? At the very moment in time, we see a vast polarization of the businessmen taking over all the politics, and the social welfare is not established at the end of the day, just because we allow people to take in a lot of stances, and the power capitalists grow on, right? So at the end of the day, we also told you that how the black market is established the moment in time we allow these people to invest their money in the election campaign as a form of investment in the real world, right? So we understand this black money is never be able to keep in the bank, because the central bank is always going to hold you accountable. At the very moment in time, they can do two things. They can keep the money in the Swiss bank, or they can send this money in the political donation. What are the problems that happens here? Its significance harms in the development of developing countries such as Bangladesh, or even in Pakistan, or even in Sudan, and some other countries in Africa as well. Before I move on, I will take the POI from the Indonesia.
Okay, I think when you talk about like the Green New Deal, those accessibility so that that policy can pass the bill comes from donations from green technology company. But second of all, why then the likelihood on your side of the house that people want to donate will exist? Engage directly.
Sure. People are most likely to donate, as my deputy prime minister already talked about. People right now, they have now an incentivization to donate or to work for these people, because these people come as their door, knock and ask for their mandate or their manifestation to be begin with, right? At the very moment that people feel connectivity with this local politician to begin with. However, in the world of the opposition side, what will happen? They're already fueled with so much money, they can gerrymander the entire politics and the seat, so the people have less incentive to invest the time and effort that I already talked about. So it helps me to get much more extension. The moment when we allow a model that already my prime minister talked about, depending on the geographical location, on depending on the country, we will set a certain amount of money, right? So two things happen. It ensures an accountability, it will ensure a transparency. We can understand and we can talk about, or we can question to the political party that where does this money coming from? Is this money is legal or illegal? Or we can talk about the accountability substances or not. Why this accountability is essentially important? The accountability is the sole purpose of this democracy that is essentially missing from the opposition side. Rather, I see a dictatorial form of no alternative wall established in the world of opposition. But the moment when you allow a small donation from a company, from a local community, probably their amount may be less in number, but over collaboration issues of a community, probably an elected member in a representative ensures a better form of democracy in the Western world, or even in the developing world, or even underdeveloping world. That's why we think the opposition side boxed all the debate and we win the debate.
Okay, I'd like to thank the speaker for their speech, and I'd like to invite our third speaker from opposition. Here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Listen to this, adjudicator. First clarification. At first, affirmative point want to equalize the voice of people because they frame it as a principal argument about democracy and inclusivity. But at second, they say on the side of the house, donation about limitations of individual donations still exist. Why then it contribute to give us winning? First, it means that they agree if having a lot of donation and a lot of money is still beneficial, that means they give justification to our practical argument about the utility about donation, since they say corporation donations will goes up. But second, that means they never want to play in the worst case scenario on the side of the house. They never want to deal what if limitation leads into less money of donation and campaign, thus you cannot maximize the utility of campaign, because that's the inherent consequences of the stance that everyone understand in the room. Why having a lot of people less informed about issue in a politic is fine? Why having nuance of politic participation become elitist for the rich? Why it's okay? We never get the response. Thirdly, this is the most important reasoning. When they say other donation will goes up, like corporation, NGO, other community, it means this argument cancel out principal argument about equal portion and voice for inclusive people in democracy. So they're practical and principle tackling by their own. Okay, just assume we remove their principle and take the practical saying another donation will goes up from company, from community, and other. If they like to play in a dirty world, like every billionaire is dirty, so they need to also play in a dirty context as well, where corporation, where community, where NGO has dirty interest and selfish interest in a politics as well. Because I think it's funny when affirmative play in a world where every billionaire is dirty, but another community, another people is clean and sincere. So they need to play in a consistent manner. Second clarification, if you still want to appreciate the extreme context like black money and extreme source of income, this argument only apply when affirmative stance want to eliminate all donation. To the fact they still want to accept certain portions of money from individual because you only limit the amount, it means you will still accept partial amount of black money as well. All the harm still exists on their side if they play in the extreme context. So they need to play in a moderate context to give fair ground for the edge and for the audience to give the winning. But let's engage to their context. Basically, they say, oh, some rich will donate to politician. Suddenly, politician create worse policy. It creates destruction to environment. It creates destruction to economy, and everything is game over. Basically, that's their argument. 3 reasons. 1, we need to eliminate extreme cases like we get money from extreme sources. I think it is clear in my first speaker because we told you about transparency and system. We want to declare the donation and the source and the object of the donation from public. We would open to public where everyone can supervise, everyone can see that system. So what is the output? Something that affirmative always dismissive about. The output will be politicians will be very picky on where money, where funding, and where investor that they want to accept. Because everyone see at them, everyone supervise their money. Second, I think affirmative also forget about element of election. Look, it's confusing when they say politicians will create bad policy to people because they blindly follow the need of investor. Listen, when this politician is that unstrategic, like taking all the money from billionaire that very dirty to enrich themselves, this politician will be not chosen anyway. In future, I think affirmative forget about political competition. If one politician is that unstrategic, taking wrong investor, taking wrong money, other politician will kick them out from political arena. So what is the output of this explanation? Something that affirmative also forget and dismissive. First output, every politician has inherent self-filter on which investor, on which money they want to accept. But second output, every politician will make it balance between the need of investor and the need of people. Because if the politician blindly follow the need of investor and ignoring the need of people, at the end, you will lose your popularity in people. That will lead to confusion anyway. So all the harms on affirmative remains as rhetorically unproven. 3, but let's play on the very worst case scenario of our argument. Something that affirmative also never want to play about. Let's assume this politician make up everything. This politician during campaign remain populist, but if they are chosen, they only care about interest of investor and create a worse policy. This is best case of affirmative. 1, society will sue and do demonstration under the reason of fake promises of campaign. But second, society will feel betrayed and won't choose political party of you anymore. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is politicians will not blindly run the need of investor only because political party will supervise them. Political party will evaluate them because political party want to remain populist in a long time, for example. But I will explain the circumstances that look like in a world of affirmative where political donations would be limited, something that affirmative also never clear. First, when you create When you want to create a breakthrough political party, but suddenly you cannot do that simply because your connection to the donator, especially when you are minority, is limited. So when the amount of donation is limited, your first established political party will be outcompeted even harder than before. But second, okay, now you decide to become ordinary voter as opposed to build new political party. But sadly, the political issue become ignorable issue. You do not really know the political issue simply because explaining new issue need a lot of funding. Simply because creating public discussion need a lot of funding. So people do not really know about usual issue around them. At best, you only know the issue of economy, but you will forget the issue of feminist movement. You will forget the issue of Black Lives Matter, and all minority issue will be forgotten because you have less money to empower and promote all of this issue. Because of this reason, I think Indonesia deserves the win. Because of this reason, we are very proud to oppose.
Okay, I'd like to thank the speakers for their speech. This ends our substantive speeches. It's now time for the reply speeches or closing remarks. We will start with We'll start with opposition. Opposition reply. You have 4 minutes. Here.
Check. Am I audible? Hello? Check. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I think that the biggest question of this debate is whether or not the unlimited donation is destroying the election in democratic countries, right? I'm going to have several issues going to talk, and I'm going to compare and explain why Team Indonesia should deserve to win and goes towards the grand final round, right? First issue that I'm going to talk about is the corporate accountability. The team government told us that the corporates are evil, they are supporting the right-leaning, and also they are destroying the one person, one vote, and so on and so forth. They advocate for a policy in whereabouts it backlashes people power. Several issues that we have already responded into this, right? Number one, in our side of the house, we have proven to you that the ability of a people power are still there. The concept of one person, one vote are still there. That means that a personal intrusion or personal are still going to be counted as to, like equalize political strategy to begin with. But number two, the ability for the politicians to select an issue is also contingent to accept the donation in which they wanted to have. Namely, the reason as to why, like a certain corporation who have a lot of donation, like guns company, pharmaceutical, technology industry, and so on and so forth, is because they are much influential and supported by the individuals on the ground, right? But in the end of the day, if the policy are not in respect of social welfare, leftist policy like socialism and so on and so forth, that means it is also in respect towards the people's opinion to, like represent what is their idea and what they want, because it is the parts of a functioning democracy to begin with, right? But number three, inside of our side of the house, the ability to corporation is also diversified. So I don't think that, like only right-leaning politician will eventually get the monies and so on and so forth, right? We have told you about the demographic changes of political activism. We already told to you things like CSR and so on and so forth. That right now, lots of CEO are shifting towards more progressive, like minority, like the minority donations and so on and so forth, right? So we think that we already won those clash. But number two, I'm going to talk about the clash in the terms of political participation. This is talking about the principle in which team government never responded, right? What have we argued in this debate is that number one, the access for politics is pretty much expensive. Ability of you to build platform, ability of you to build volunteership, ability of you to create an advertisement is pretty much expensive. But the problem in this kind of cases, if you limit the donation only coming from the individuals, what will happen is that one, the ability for an individual to donate is less likely because they have another spending to do so, or even they are not politically attached. So like the numbers of donation will eventually going to be jeopardized and the ability of doing political campaign is going to be lower. The consequences of this that is never responded by the proposition is that number one, the political discourses ability to penetrate area that is pretty much uninformed, like the rural states and so on and so forth, are less likely going to be happen because you don't have the money and what it takes to have the technicalities in it of itself, right? But number two, in talking about political platform for the minority in it of itself, knowing that the individuals on the ground are already becoming poor, who are coming from the less fortunate, who are not wealthy and so on and so forth, depends their political destiny through donation out of NGO, out of the profit corporation and the individuals on the ground. If you limit the ability for the corporation to donate, what will happen then? Only wealthy individuals who can influence the politics, who can enter the worlds of politics, namely individuals like Mike Bloomberg have no problem to enter politics because he is in default are rich individuals, right? But in comparison of Rashida Tlaib, who was coming from the refugee family, for example, she relies through donation from Microsoft, through Cisco WebEx, and also another property companies that supported her progressive cause. In this kind of cases, you already limit to ability to participate, firstly coming from the voters, and secondly coming from the politician in and of itself. By those two reasons, we have already proven to you that Team Indonesia should go to the grand final. Thank you so much, and good night.
I would like to thank the speaker for their speech, and our final speaker for today's debate, I'd like to invite our proposition reply speech. Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, starting in 3, 2, 1. We win this debate because side opposition don't have any alternatives. They don't have a counter prop to begin with. Their case goes from assertions to dismissiveness to a barrage of whip arguments. Don't be concerned, we'll engage with every single one of them. But I think their case and the entire premise is deconstructed the moment in time they rely on like catering to newer politicians and bringing them up, grooming them up, right, from minority communities. Understand, in a world of Republicans and Democrats, like you get limited opportunity to give limelight to people who are new to begin with, without mass endorsement of huge corporations being incentivized to invest in you because you will help them in the long run is the only ticket for you to be elected. And that's the problem we have identified from the Prime Minister and carried on. If case continuity is the biggest metric of this debate, we win this debate uncontested. But still, to be like a bit more convincing, I would give you a shopping list of arguments they don't engage with, right? They never give principal responses of as per why it is okay for you to manufacture opinions, especially when that opinion is everything that certain communities have. You don't have any right to intervene and mold these opinions, put more money on Facebook ads, like preach for politicians that you don't even know about, you don't trust them, you probably wouldn't invite them to your house, and you still choose to endorse them. Why? Because you're perhaps running for an organization that needs certain tax exempts or certain perks. But secondly, they never respond to as per why. Like this urge for getting higher donations would ever like trump your urgency to have people who truly have ownership of those donations. We gave you the comparative as per why individual accountability is something that matters. And in our model, every single individual donating $1 knows what they're betting on and why, for the greater good, they should subscribe to this model, right? So few rebuttals to side opposition, and this is quite repetitive at this point. They still claim, even in the like whip speech, as per why the equal division of power is an option, or as per why the rich privileged people are gonna go away all of a sudden. We highly think that's unlikely, because imagine panels in a world where I have a lot of connections. I was probably elected in the last semester, and I have a lot of politicians backing me up. I have good networking with MNCs, and I have a lot of political prowess and a lot of hold over social media. And to back all of that up, I have investors who don't give a damn about whether or not I make good policies, whether or not I care about the people, the environment, or the basic respect of law, right? All they care is about getting me elected. Why is this problematic? Because the one line of defense that they give from side opposition is, I'm going to bring someone from ghetto, and just because they're popular, and since you can raise millions and billions of dollars, you're immediately going to get someone who's going to back them, right? This is like delusional at this point. But finally, when they talk about like Yeah, so oftentimes these are people who truly would come up and like change things. Like in terms of mechanizing this change, as per why that would happen in their world, specifically when they can show no mechanism, as per why the difference of resources between the privileged and the non-privileged significantly increase. Why would that happen? I get no mechanism. To conclude, I believe this was a debate about increasing liability, accountability in terms of who you invest in, what's the procedure that you invest in. And like Samad and Reja made it quite articulate, and it was evident on my speech as well, that people should know or should be accountable to what extent that they endorse someone. The moment in time you endorse someone just because they will give you benefits in the long run for individual gains, that's the point in time you have no right to donate $1 to a campaign. Thank you so much. We will win this debate.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers for a wonderful debate. I'm sure we all enjoyed it very much. The judges are now going to deliberate, and I think I'll hand over the floor back to Ms. Rutab.
Yeah, thank you, Tasneem. What a riveting, what an enthralling debate we've had so far. Just to remind everybody, the judges are going to take their time, deliberate. We also have opened public voting, so that links have been shared on this on the channels that is streaming right now. You have around an hour. Around which we will take public voting, but the majority of the weightage for the judgment will go to the judges. So fingers crossed, we will let the teams know who have made it to the final in about an hour or so. We will have our second session in about 30, 35, 40 minutes. And then we hope that the team Indonesia and Bangladesh can join us as just guests for that semi-final round. But thank you so much to the teams, to the judges, and I will see you in about 30 minutes.